וזמרת יהוה ישועה עוזי וזמרת יהוה ישועה עוזי וזמרת יהוה
Try that again. My name is Rabbi Chaim Martyr, and I'm the rabbi at the Hebrew Institute here in White Plains. A few moments ago, someone said to me in just some conversation, they said, "It's good to see you." And they said, "Ooh, I shouldn't say that, because, you know." And I responded, "No, that's how we all feel right now. It's good to see you." And if you could stand on this bima and look to the back of this room filled with people, you know that everyone came here today because we wanted to see and be with one another. That's what we have done throughout the millennia, and that's what we do today in times of sorrow and distress and grief. We turn to one another, and then together was often the practice to turn to the words of the Psalms. And the words of the Psalms had us turn towards heaven. So I'm going to invite you, the sheet that you find hopefully in your hands as you came in, to recite Psalm 121 with me. And we'll do it this way. I'll recite the verse in the Hebrew, and I invite you please to recite together the line that follows in the English. Shir LaMa'alot, Esa Einai El Heharim Me'ayin Yavo Ezri. A song of ascent. Ezri Me'im Adonai, Osei Shamayim Va'aretz. Al yitain lamot raglecha, al yanum shomrecha. Hine lo yanum velo yishan, shomer Yisrael. Adonai shomrecha, Adonai tzilacha al yad yaminecha. Yomam Hashemesh lo yakeka, ve'yareach balayla. Adonai yishmorcha mikol ra, yishmor et nafshecha. Adonai yishmor tzeitcha uvoecha, me'ata ve'ad olam. Amen.
We take a moment now with those words, those images in our minds for silence together.
May the one who makes peace in the heavens descend on us, and the world will say, Amen. May the one who makes peace in the heavens descend on us, and the world will say, Amen. Amen. Descend on us, and the world will say, Amen. May the one who makes peace in the heavens descend on us, and the world will say, Amen. Oh, say shalom, be Shalom Aleinu ve'akol Yisrael ve'akol yoshvitenu. Amen. Amen. Ve'akol Yoshvei Tevel, oh say shalom, B'yomam, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Amen, amen, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel. May the one who makes peace in the heavens descend on us, and the world will say,
Good afternoon. I'm Rabbi Jonathan Blake. I'm the senior rabbi of Westchester Reformed Temple in Scarsdale. If you'll turn to the second page of your Choveret, our service, we can hear and share words by one of the great poets of our time, Rabbi Naomi Levy. A prayer for the dead of Tree of Life congregation. Teach us, God, to honor the souls we have lost by raising our hands and voices together in the cause of peace, because Torah is a tree of life and all its paths are peaceful. Work through us, God. Turn our helplessness into action. Teach us to believe that we can rise up from this tragedy and banish the hate that is tearing our world apart. We must never be indifferent to the plight of any who suffer. We must learn to care, to open our hearts and open our hands. Innocent blood is calling out to us. Please join me. God of the brokenhearted, God of the living, God of the dead, gather the souls of the victims into your eternal shelter. Let them find peace in your presence, God. Their lives have ended, but their lights can never be extinguished. May they shine on us always and illuminate our way. Amen.
I'm Les Bronstein. I'm the rabbi around the corner at Beit Shalom Synagogue in White Plains. Either Paul Leager or Dan Leager, I have his name differently in different lists. One of the worshipers of Tree of Life congregation, or one of the two congregations that it shares its space with, Dor Chadash and another minyan, faithful worshiper of one of those congregations, fights for his life under loving medical care at this moment. 4 first responders, police officers, rushing in to save lives, which is all they know how to do, save life and affirm life. And now they are fighting for their lives under loving medical care. And several others, whose names I don't have, fighting for their lives. Our prayer is always for refuat haguf, healing of body, for if the body cannot heal, the soul cannot thrive, but we also pray for healing of spirit, refuat nefesh, and healing of soul, refuat nefesh, for the millions of others who ache and who need loving care and who need to give that care at this moment. We pray for their lives. We pray that they find healing. And we sing now this song of healing and love.
I'd like to invite any cantors who are present today who would like to come and fill in the choral parts to Heal Us Now. Please join me on the bima.
Refainu Adonai v'nerafer, Hoshienu v'nivasheha, El karov lechol korehav, Akarov l'rehav yisho. We pray for healing of the body. We pray for healing of the soul, for strength of flesh and mind and spirit. We pray to once again be whole and not reform. Oh, please heal us now. Refuat ha-nefesh, refuat ha-guf, refuat shelema. Heal us now. Heal us now.
הושיע את עמך, וברך את נחלתך, וראם ונחם את העולם. מי שברך אבותינו, מי שברך אמותינו, אנא אדוני הושיענה. We pray for healing of our people. We pray for healing of the land, and peace for every race and nation,
Before I served here as assistant cantor to this beautiful congregation, I served Tree of Life in Pittsburgh.
My name is David Harris, the American Jewish Committee. I'm not here to bring either song or prayer. I'm here to bring a message, a very personal message. In 2003, to mark her 80th anniversary, a woman wrote a public letter for the first time in her life. She entitled it Letter from an Octogenarian. She had survived Stalin and the anti-Semitism of the Soviet Union. She had survived Hitler and the anti-Semitism of the Third Reich. The woman was my mother. And in 2003, she said, they're coming back. My job as her son was to try and allay her concerns and her fears, although a part of me knew that she was right and I needed to listen to her. We all needed to listen to her. She heard from the streets of Paris at the time, Mort aux Juifs, death to the Jews, something she had heard under the Nazis in Vichy years before. And she said in that letter and in a subsequent letter on her 90th birthday, I've lived my life. My grandchildren and great-grandchildren had their lives in front of them. Will they hear more? Mort aux Juifs, death to the Jews. My mother passed away on October the 12th, just 2 weeks ago. She wanted to go. In a way, I'm happy that she wasn't here today. It would have been too painful, too excruciatingly painful for her, as it is for us, but in a way, she's seen the movie that many of us haven't seen. We've heard about, but we haven't seen. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished officials who are here, Jews, Christians, Muslims, all of you who responded in just a few hours, I will readily confess, I'm tired of mourning dead Jews. This evening we mark Ochi Day, which is the word in Greek that means no. It's when the Greeks refused to yield to the Nazis who occupied Greece. And the result of that invasion and occupation was that 96% of the Jews of Thessaloniki, Greece, one of the great centers of Jewish life and energy in the world, were destroyed in Auschwitz. We mourn them tonight. Last month we mourned the Jews of Babi Yar, who on September 29th and 30th in a ravine near Kiev were the targets of what became a record in mass murder, with more than 30,000 Jews industrially killed in less than 2 days. In August, we marked the Night of the Murdered Poets, when Jewish cultural leaders in the Soviet Union were murdered by Stalin. And so it goes. And next month, it will be Kristallnacht, and on and on. And now to that list we add the 11 victims of Etz Chaim, of Tree of Life. How many more eulogies will we have to give? How many more times will we have to say kaddish? How many more times will we have to chant El Molei Rachamim? How many more times will we have to bow our head in grief and bury our heads in our handkerchiefs and our Kleenex? How many more times? Someone wrote on Twitter and said, we are, after all, we Jews, the canaries in the mine. Ladies and gentlemen, I refuse to be that canary. And you ought to refuse to be that canary any longer either. Because for the miner to live, the canary must die. The canary must die of methane gas and carbon dioxide in order to signal to the miner to get out before it's too late. It's time for us Jews to say we will no longer be the canary. We are a life-affirming people. How ironic that we gather so often to commemorate death and murder and destruction, when what we have brought to the world in the moral code of planet Earth is an affirmation of life, a celebration of life, a belief in partnership between the divine and the human to perfect this broken and imperfect world. And yet here we are again and again with our heads buried in grief. I've spent, together with my colleagues, the last 2 decades traveling the world, this country, Europe, and elsewhere, trying to wake up a largely sleeping world. After all, I had a good alarm clock, Nellie Harris. She had a PhD in history, not from university, but from Stalin and Hitler. She was my best teacher. And we tried to tell officials who too often were uninterested or distracted or unbelieving, anti-Semitism is reemerging. It's reemerging not from 1 or 2, but from 3 different places. And we need to be swivel-headed as Jews and trifocal. Depoliticize this. The right only wants to see the anti-Semitism of the left. The left only wants to see the anti-Semitism of the right. And on it goes. We see 3 main sources. We saw what was on display yesterday in Pittsburgh, the anti-Semitism of those who, in the spirit of the Nazis and the Holocaust deniers, believe that we should be extinguished from the earth. And attacking a synagogue on Shabbat, while a baby naming ceremony was going on, was in this demented person's mind a legitimate expression of that bigotry. We have on the left those who believe that only one nation on earth has no right to exist, no right to express its self-determination, no right to defend itself. And then we have those jihadists who have taken a noble faith and they've turned it into, yes, a crusade against Jews. In France, in Belgium, in Denmark, in Bulgaria, in Latin America, and elsewhere. We need to be awake and we need to be alert. And again, we need to separate this from politics. It goes well beyond politics, and in the era of social media that can bring together this massive crowd in 4 hours, it can unite every anti-Semite on earth in 4 minutes. We're living in a totally different world. Our answer, it seems to me, must include but go beyond thoughts and prayers. Thoughts and prayers have their place. But my question to us is, what happens tonight and tomorrow and Tuesday and Wednesday? Is this story over for us, or is it only beginning? Are we mad? Are we mobilized? What are we going to do next? And I submit that above all, we have to do several things. Number 1, we have to tell our political leaders here and in other democratic countries, pull back from the edge. Stop the dangerous rhetoric. It's time to reintroduce decency and civility and mutual respect, and yes, where possible, bipartisanship. We're one country, not 2 or 3. And we need to be reminded of that, not just in word occasionally, but indeed each and every single day. Number two, we have said for years, anti-Semitism begins with Jews, it never ends with Jews. Anti-Semitism is a cancer that, left to metastasize, will grow and ultimately target and destroy the system we know as democracy and pluralism. Ladies and gentlemen, all people of goodwill of every race and ethnicity and background are in this together. And we, all of us, need to forge those coalitions. And we need to be grateful for those of our friends and partners who came from outside the Jewish community at such short notice to be here today. A special shout out to them. And we know they'll be with us tomorrow as we will be with them tomorrow. Tragically, this is not the first hate crime on American soil 3 years ago. In Charleston, South Carolina, 9 African Americans were targeted and murdered in a house of worship on a holy day simply for the sake of their race. And if you go back, you will see that hundreds of black churches have been targeted over the years under various administrations in this country. America is not new to hate crimes. We better find hate responses. We thought we had them. We obviously need more. So, if nothing else, once we've left Kol Ami, I urge us all, don't stop. Don't see this as an end in itself. This is only the beginning. It must be the beginning. We must regain our country. We must regain all those countries that are now being threatened and challenged by those, whether from the left or the right, or through religious zeal, that want to impose their way of life on our precious democracy and pluralism. Martin Luther King perhaps said it best, as was often the case. We all learn to live together as brothers and sisters, or we die together as fools. Finally, at last, in the wake of Etz Chaim, maybe, just maybe, we can regain our country and learn to live together as sisters and brothers.
Good afternoon. I want to say to my friend, he's a hard act to follow. Thank you for everything you've said. I'm Elliot Engel. I'm congressman representing large portions of Westchester County, and I'm speaking for all the elected officials here today who are all here representing Westchester. And I'm just overwhelmed by how many people there are out there. If you were standing where I'm standing and looked out, it's just heartwarming to see so many people come to such an important event on such short notice. So thank you all very, very much for coming. My friends, this was the worst attack on Jews in the history of the United States of America, the worst. And I have no great feelings or assurances that it will be the last. Because what happens to our people can happen to any people. We talked about the churches in South Carolina. It doesn't matter where, or it doesn't matter when. It's just a matter that it happens at all. Couldn't sleep last night. I was so upset. Because I remember when I was a little boy, growing up in the Bronx, and people used to talk about what happened with the Holocaust, with the Shoah. And some people used to say it could never happen here. I think we know that it could happen here. I think we know that unless good people stand together, people of goodwill, things could absolutely happen. We need to tone down the rhetoric in this country. And I don't want to get political, but it starts with the president on down. it doesn't matter whether one agrees or doesn't agree with what the president or anybody says. The fact of the matter is that things have broken down in Washington, and so we have armed camps. Instead of people working together, they're fighting together. Instead of realizing that we're all Americans and we get sent to represent our people, regardless of what party we're from, we need to encourage dialogue and stop the rhetoric. And the other thing is, we need sensible gun control in this country once and for all. The president's saying that there should have been armed guards in the back. That's not the answer. We can have all kinds of shootouts here. But we have to make sure that guns are not in the hands of people like the assassin yesterday. We have to make sure that sensible gun control, no one's trying to take away people's right to own a gun, but sensible gun control. We have to be careful about what we see going on today with the BDS movement and on college campuses, where people who are pro-Israel get shouted down. I don't mind if everybody has a right to speak, even if what they're saying is not something that I personally like. But when one side has a right to speak and the other side is shut down and shouted down, that's not democracy. I'm also sick and tired of people saying, well, you know, I'm not anti-Semitic, I'm just anti-Zionistic, with Zionism. Baloney, baloney, and baloney. I hope this opens the eyes and ears and thoughts of so many people around America, because what happens to one group can happen to another group. It happened to our group, so we perhaps feel the pain a little bit more. But what about the pain that the African American church people felt in Charleston, South Carolina, and other things with other groups being killed just because of who they are? Let's remember the chilling words that this assassin said as he walked into the synagogue. All Jews must die. Didn't say some Jews, didn't say certain Jews. All Jews must die. And I think we ought to remember that. We ought to remember the mindset. We ought to remember what was said. And we have to remember that this was an attack against our people, but an attack against any people is an attack on our people. And if people want to come to this country and apply to be accepted for asylum or whatever it is, or to be citizens of this country, I believe in borders. There have to be borders. But I remember my grandparents came to this country 110 years ago. And remember how many Jews were turned down to come to this country during the Shoah. Let's not forget that. And let's not use those people as an excuse to attack any group whatsoever. I hope when all is said and done for me personally that I won't be the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee, and I want to assure you that if I am, some of these issues are going to be addressed in the next Congress, and I'll make sure they will be. And I want to tell you that it's so wonderful to look out here and see so many of you coming here. We feel a hole in our heart, and it won't soon go away. But we don't want to have just thoughts and prayers. Our thoughts and prayers are with you. And then 2 months from now, 3 months from now, 5 months from now, 6 months from now, similar things happen again. You know, anti-Semitism is rearing its ugly head, not only in the United States, but all over the world. Israel is singled out time and time again for just trying to exist as a country. Now, I know there are differences of opinion and people agree with this one or that one. It doesn't matter. The fact of the matter is that the Jewish people are entitled to a country. The Jewish people are entitled to have the same rights that people all over the world have it. So I want to conclude with a saying that a great colleague of mine in the Congress, John Lewis of Georgia, who was in the civil rights movement in the 1960s, often says. He says, you know, we may have come here on different ships, but we're now all in the same boat together. Thank you, and thank you for being here.
Good evening, my brothers and sisters of faith. I was just so hurt and horrified yesterday to hear the tragic news of people who went to their place of worship be killed just because how they worship and what they worship and who they represent. I'm Troy DeCohen, and I'm the pastor of the Mount Vernon Heights Congregational Church, and I'm the chair of the Interfaith Clergy for Social Action and president of the United Black Clergy of Westchester. And I was just here last week at your Shabbat, where we had the conversation of gun control. And a few days later, here we are addressing the same issue, but now it has hit home. What a terrible, terrible ordeal. I had reached out to Rabbi Milgram, Les Bronstein, Rabbi Bronstein, yesterday as soon as I heard the news. And I shared my condolences and my heartfelt sorrow that we no longer have safe places anywhere anymore, whether it's in school, whether it's in the synagogues, the churches, the mosques. We no longer have safe places where we can assemble ourselves together and do the things that is common among us. And one of the things, I was listening to Congressman Engel, and he's talking about the rhetoric and the tone has to be kind of taken down from our leadership. But I'm conscious as a pastor. In the book of Proverbs, it says, for the tongue has the power of life and death. And when you have people in high places spewing hatred, separation among people, eventually that thing manifests and we see evil rise. And that's what this is what we are seeing. You know, I shared at our panel discussion last week here, you know, the earth is really small, and we must find a way to live together. Whether we black, white, brown, Catholic, Jewish, Protestant, we must find a way for all of us to live here. Because if not, we will destroy each other. We will consume one another. And the thing that is I find so fascinating, we talk about gun control, yes. We talk about the need. Myself and Reverend Domenico and members of the ICSA, when the county was trying to push to have the gun show, we stood before the county legislators and we pleaded our case that a gun show should never be in Westchester County. We should never have. And the thing that was so interesting, here I have my collar on and other clergy came, and it was members that were there at the presentation in the county legislature that started to argue with me and got to the place where they say, Reverend, you need to be careful because when you leave here, you may get tased. This is the country we live in, that there's no more respect of one another, that no longer can people stand up for right without being criticized, ostracized, and then categorized because we're not always in agreement with one another, to where we now no longer try to reason among each other, but now we look for weapons and we look for guns in order to settle our arguments. We could no longer do this. We must learn how to come together. And I pledge my support to any involvement, movement, every church, every pastor, every religious leader that I could think of. If we have to all come together and figure out a strategy, I pledge that I would do everything I can in order to end this violence, end this, and for me, it's not even violence, it's an evil. Some things are spiritual. Here we had at Sandy Hook, they killed children. Unheard of. Now we have in the synagogues. They said the person was the youngest person that was killed was 64 years of age. The oldest was 97. Where are we going? So, Rabbi, anything that we have to do, and especially in our own backyard, and it's good to see our leadership here, then we need to do it and have that conversation. Let's be honest. But let us settle this, that we no longer have to mourn the loss of loved ones just because of who they are. We don't all look alike, we don't all speak alike, but we got to learn to like each other anyhow. Thank you.
My name is Rabbi Adam Baldachin from Sha'arei Tikva in Scarsdale. We remember the memories of the victims of Tree of Life and pledge our commitment to building a better world, one act of love, of chesed, one act of tzedakah, of charity, one call to our legislators at a time. May we be moved to action to honor the deaths of our brothers and sisters. Yizkor Elohim, may God remember the souls of our brethren, martyrs of our people, who gave their lives for the sanctification of God's name. In their memory do we pledge charity. May their bravery, their dedication, and their purity be reflected in our lives. May their souls be bound up in the bond of life, and may they rest forever in dignity and peace. Amen.
For those that are able, we ask you to take the green prayer book in front of you and turn to page 111 as we rise for the memorial prayer, El Malei Racham.
Kiroshim tehorim kezohar harakia maziri kenishpot kol ele shehazkanu hayom livracha she'olchu le'olamam began Eden tehi menuchatam Bal harachamim hastirem beseter kenafecha leolamim vitzror hachaim et nishmotehem Adonai hu nachalatam v'yanuchu v'shalom al mishkevoteihem v'nomar Amen.
Please remain standing. Thank you. We didn't get the mic on fast enough to tell you. Yeah. My name is Ari Eisenberg. I'm rabbi at Temple Israel Center here in White Plains.
I'm Daniel Groper. I'm a rabbi at Community Synagogue of Rye and the president of the Westchester Board of Rabbis. For years, before we as a people gathered to say Kaddish, we have read aloud names of people from Columbine and Aurora and Sandy Hook and Charleston, South Carolina. And they were names that we connected to because we were all Americans. But somehow those names were distant from us as Jewish people, because the last names were not necessarily our last names. As we come to read these names before we say the mourner's Kaddish, a chill somehow comes down our spines and perhaps a tear comes to our eyes, because these names sound like our names. These names sound like the names of our relatives. In fact, perhaps They might be our relatives. Two of these names, two of these brothers were first cousins with a congregant of mine. And I spoke to him this morning. This hits home because these are our people. We mourn for them, and has been heard tonight. Then perhaps after the mourning has ended, we will be truly moved to act, to make sure that their names truly remain for all of us a sacred blessing. Zichronam livracha, may their memories be a blessing. As we remember with reverence and with blessing, Joyce Feinberg, Richard Gottfried, Rose Mallinger, Jerry Rabinowitz, Cecil Rosenthal, David Rosenthal,
Bernice Simon, Sylvan Simon, Daniel Stein, Melvin Wax, Irving Younger. Please join us on page 92A, page 92, as together we recite a communal mourner's kaddish.
Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, be'alma tivrach chivutei ve'amlich malchutei, v'chayechon u'yomechon u'chayei lechol Beit Yisrael, v'agala u'bizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam v'lamen almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitmamam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei l'kudsha b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata damiran ve'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shalom al Rabba min Shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen.
As we conclude together, two things will happen at the same time. The first is that I'd like to invite all clergy, civic leaders, and elected officials to please come to the bima. And while that's happening, please turn around, find someone you don't know, and please introduce yourself. This late afternoon, we demonstrate to each other. It's okay, the noise is good. We demonstrate to each other that we can come together, that we can stand up for one another. We have to exercise those muscles a lot, coming together, getting to know each other, hugging more, being present, being more courageous and more hopeful. And take all those sentiments with you to the polls in 2 weeks. We can make the world better, and we shall overcome. We're going to lead you, everyone up here, we're going to sing together 4 verses, we shall overcome. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll fight hate together. We shall overcome.
God shed his grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea.
Take this spirit with you as you go and make it grow. Good evening.
Yes, of course, we met the other night. Yes, likewise. So, me too. Being in this community makes a difference. We did a program at Sound and Schechter many years ago on interfaith friendships, and then Richard Garfunkel invited us to. So I want to give this guy a hug. I'm thinking about this.
In happier occasions of sympathy. It's funny because last Shabbat we were celebrating the refugees.
Last week.
All over the synagogues throughout America. That was our theme. Like today is Reformation Sunday. Last week was welcoming the refugees. And the shooter heard of that and just freaked out. It's against all of us. This one really is against all of us. All right, brother. You said. Thank you.
Okay.